The camera caught everything: my mother's shaking hand, a stranger's leather folder, and the woman I paid $40,000 to protect her, holding her shoulder in place while she signed away her own life. I'm Renee Foster, 43, 3 beauty salons in Dallas, built from nothing starting at 26 with a loan that terrified me every night for a year. For 14 months, I paid a caregiver named Marisol Trent to help a con man rewrite my mother's will, one signature at a time, at her own kitchen table, while she smiled at me every single day like nothing was wrong. This is how I caught her, on camera, and how one bad hire turned into 6 ruined families, a dead law license, a police investigation, and a 9-year-old grudge I never saw coming. Part 1. Who I was before any of this. I grew up in a small house in Garland, Texas, the oldest of 3 kids, raised mostly by a mother who cut hair for 31 years in the same salon, coming home every night smelling like ammonia and hairspray, tired enough to fall asleep at the kitchen table before she could even change out of her work clothes. My mother taught me everything I know about people before I ever opened a business of my own. How to listen to a client who just got divorced and only needs someone to tell her she still looks beautiful. How to notice when someone says, "I'm fine," and means the exact opposite. She was my first teacher in this industry, years before I opened my own first salon at 26, with a loan that kept me up at night for the entire first year, terrified I'd lose everything before I'd even started. I built the second location 8 years later. That's when Desmond Cray came into my life, an investor a mutual friend introduced me to, confident, well-dressed, offering capital I desperately needed and didn't have. He talked about partnership like it was a gift he was giving me. For the first year, it felt like one. Then, it didn't. By year 2, it was obvious his idea of partnership meant control, not collaboration. He wanted decision-making power disproportionate to his investment. He wanted his name on the lease. He wanted, eventually, more money out of the buyout than his actual stake justified. And when I refused, the split turned ugly. Months of tension, a lawyer on each side, a settlement that gave him less than he demanded, but more than he deserved. He signed the release and walked away. And I remember standing in the parking lot afterward feeling, for the first time in 2 years, like I could finally breathe. I thought that chapter was closed permanently. I didn't understand yet that some men don't forget a loss. They just wait for a better moment to collect it. Part 2. The hire that felt like relief. My mother, Yvonne, got diagnosed with early Alzheimer's 18 months ago. Sharp some days, gone on others. Running 3 locations and 22 employees doesn't leave room for full-time caregiving. So after months of guilt and sleepless nights, I hired help through an agency with clean reviews and a decade of placements behind it. Marisol Trent came with a resume that checked out completely. I called every reference myself, a former client in Plano who cried a little describing how gentle Marisol had been with her late husband, a nursing supervisor who called her one of the most patient caregivers I've worked with in 15 years. Nothing raised a flag, nothing should have. Within weeks, she wasn't just staff. She baked with Mom on Sunday afternoons, did her hair the way she liked it, the way I never had the patience to get exactly right. Sat through the bad afternoons, the ones where Mom cried for no reason she could name, or asked the same question 9 times in an hour. Afternoons I couldn't always be there for. I remember the exact relief of that first month. My shoulders dropped an inch after over a year of constant dread. I remember thinking more than once that hiring her was the single smartest decision I'd made since opening my 3rd salon. 4 months in, I installed a small camera in the living room. Not suspicion, guilt. I wanted the moments I was missing. Mom laughing at something on TV, Marisol reading her the mail like it was still interesting news. Small, tender things I told myself I deserved to see, even from a distance. I got something else instead. Tuesday, March, lunch break. Sitting in my car outside Salon 2, eating a sandwich I don't remember tasting. I opened the app to check in on a whim and saw a man I'd never met sitting at my mother's kitchen table with a leather folder of documents spread across the surface. Marisol stood behind her chair, one hand resting on her shoulder. Not comfort, positioning. The exact stance of someone making sure a pen lands exactly where it's supposed to and stays there long enough to finish. The timestamp read 6 weeks old. Nobody had told me about a visit. Nobody had told me about paperwork. I sat in that parking lot for 11 minutes without moving, replaying the same 40 seconds until the stranger's face was burned permanently into my memory. Part 3. 5 visits, 1 script. I called Harold Weiss that same afternoon, my mother's estate attorney for 11 years, the man who drafted her original trust back when she was still fully herself. "There's no record of any amendment, Renee," he said after pulling the file while I sat frozen on hold. "Nothing's come through this office. Whatever got signed at that table never touched me." "Could it still be legal without you?" "Depends entirely on how it was executed. But if someone's amending a trust behind the acting attorney's back, that's already a very bad sign before we even get to whether your mother understood what she was signing." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and pulled every frame of footage the cloud storage still had, 4 full months of it, scrubbing through hours of ordinary, boring, beautiful nothing until I found what I was looking for. Not one visit. 5. Spaced almost exactly 3 weeks apart, like a schedule kept with the same discipline I use for staff shift rotations. Same man, same folder, same soft, practiced voice, explaining something my mother clearly didn't follow. Marisol positioned the same way every single time, never touching the pen herself, never rushing, just present, just enough gentle pressure on a shoulder to keep a confused woman sitting still long enough to finish a signature she wouldn't remember 5 minutes later. In 3 separate clips, I watched my mother ask, almost word for word, "What is this for again?" In 3 separate clips, I watched Marisol answer with the exact same sentence, like a script rehearsed until it stopped sounding rehearsed. "It's just the same trust paperwork, Yvonne. Don't worry, I'm right here with you." I paused on that line longer than any other. "I'm right here with you." She'd said that to comfort me too, more times that year than I could count. I'd believed her every single time. Part 4. The man wasn't even legal. I didn't trust myself to investigate this alone. Too much rage, not enough distance to be useful. I hired Corinne Baptiste, a retired fraud detective who'd spent the last 6 years specializing in elder exploitation cases, recommended by a friend whose own father had gone through something disturbingly similar years earlier. Corinne watched the footage once, completely silent, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When it ended, she looked up and said, "I've seen that exact stance before. The hand on the shoulder isn't affection, that's stabilization. Whoever trained her to do that has done this more than once." 4 days later, she had a name for the man in the folder, Rodrigo Alvarado. Not a licensed notary, not anymore. His commission had been revoked 3 years earlier, after a formal complaint filed by a family in Fort Worth, alleging almost the identical pattern. An in-home caregiver, a series of quiet document visits, a will discovered only after the elderly client had already died, too late for anyone to challenge it in time. Rodrigo, Corinne found, worked closely with a small estate law office run by an attorney named Desmond Cray. I sat with that name for a long moment before it fully landed. Corinne's research over the following week painted a picture far larger than a single bad caregiver. Desmond had built a quiet, specialized niche practice, identifying elderly clients with early cognitive decline through relationships he maintained across multiple home care staffing agencies. Then, using trusted caregivers, women like Marisol, to keep families comfortable enough not to ask questions while the paperwork got handled behind their backs. "How many families are we talking about?" I asked her. "At least 3 I can confirm right now," she said. "I think it's more. I'm still pulling records." He'd built this business, I understood, with a specific kind of nausea, on exactly the skill set he'd developed watching me run my salons all those years ago. Reading people, making them comfortable, closing. Part 5. The note she hid in her Bible. 3 weeks into the investigation, I was straightening my mother's nightstand, sorting her medications into the little labeled boxes she could no longer manage on her own, when I found a folded piece of paper tucked into the lining of her Bible, wedged behind the ribbon marker at Psalms. Her handwriting, shakier than I remembered from even a year earlier, but unmistakably hers. Renee, the man keeps coming back. M says it's fine, but I don't remember what I sign. His name is R.A. Don't trust the papers. I love you, Mom. No date on it. I brought it straight to Harold, who compared the handwriting against older samples from her files and estimated, based on the steadiness of certain letters compared to more recent signatures, that it had likely been written roughly 10 weeks earlier. A lucid window, a brief moment where the fog had lifted just enough for her to understand that something was deeply wrong, and to try, in the only way she still could, to warn me before that clarity slipped away again. I sat on her bedroom floor with that note in my hands and cried for the first time since any of this started. Not from the betrayal itself, I'd been braced for that by then. From the image of her, frightened and confused, finding just enough clarity to protect me, and running out of time to say anything more than a name and a warning. I still keep that note. It's in a drawer in my own nightstand now, not evidence anymore, just proof that even as her mind was leaving her, some part of her never stopped trying to take care of me. Part 6. Building the case. Harold brought in a colleague specializing in elder law litigation, an attorney named Priscilla Nakamura, sharp and unshakably calm in a way that made me trust her within the first 10 minutes. She reviewed everything: the footage, the note, Rodrigo's revoked commission, Corinne's early findings, laid out across her conference table like puzzle pieces she'd assembled 100 times before. "This amendment is void on its face," she said. "Doesn't matter what your mother's cognitive state was at the moment of signing. Rodrigo's notary commission was already dead before any of these documents were executed. Combine that with a diagnosed cognitive decline and recorded footage showing clear confusion during signing, and you have a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. So, it's over? We just show the court the video? It's a start, but I want the full financial trail before we file anything. I want to know exactly how deep this goes, and I want a medical evaluation on record establishing your mother's capacity, or lack of it, during the specific window these documents were signed. We move carefully, and we move once, correctly." The plan came together over the following days. Priscilla filed a formal request for an independent cognitive evaluation, scheduled discreetly through Mom's existing neurologist, so nothing would tip off Marisol. Corinne kept digging into the financial trail, eventually surfacing bank records that stopped me cold. Recurring payments, every 3 weeks, from a shell account registered under a name I didn't recognize. Willowbrook Advisory Group, directly into Marisol's personal checking account. Each one labeled, absurdly, wellness consulting fees. Willowbrook traces back to Desmond, Corinne told me, same registered agent as 2 other shell entities I found tied to his firm. I didn't fire Marisol that week, or the week after. Priscilla insisted on it, and every fiber of me hated the advice, even while understanding exactly why it mattered. "Keep the camera running," she said. "Keep behaving normally. The moment she suspects you know, everything gets harder to prove and easier for them to bury." So I kept showing up, kept thanking Marisol for her patience with my mother's bad days, kept sitting across from her at that same kitchen table, watching her smile at me with the same warmth she'd shown my mother on camera dozens of times, knowing exactly what that warmth had actually cost us. It remains one of the hardest things I've ever done. Harder than building 3 businesses from nothing. Harder than watching my mother forget my father's name for the first time last spring. Sitting still, smiling back, waiting. Part 7. The other families. While we waited for the evaluation results, Corinne's investigation widened further than any of us expected. She tracked down 2 of the 3 families connected to the earlier Fort Worth complaint against Rodrigo, and both agreed to talk. The first was a woman named Denise Okafor, whose father had died 8 months earlier with a will that suddenly, in his final year, named a caregiver as a 15% beneficiary, a caregiver placed through the same staffing agency Marisol had come from. Denise had contested it in probate court and lost, unable to prove her father lacked capacity at the time of signing because there had been no camera, no footage, nothing but her word against a notarized document that looked entirely legitimate on paper. "If I'd had what you have," she told me over the phone, her voice tight with an old, unresolved anger, "it would have gone completely differently." The second family, the Torres Whitfields, had caught the scheme early enough to stop it. An alert daughter-in-law who'd noticed the same recurring consulting fee pattern in her mother-in-law's bank statements and confronted the caregiver directly before any documents were finalized. She'd fired the caregiver, changed the locks, and never pursued charges, assuming it was an isolated incident. "It wasn't isolated," Corinne told her gently. "It was a system. You just happened to catch it in time." 6 families, at minimum, possibly more that Desmond's practice had touched over 4 years. Families who never checked their aging parents' bank statements closely enough, or who had, and assumed the small recurring charges were simply part of normal caregiving costs, never imagining they were funding the very scheme designed to take everything else. I thought about how close I'd come to being exactly like them, how easily this could have stayed hidden if I hadn't installed that camera out of guilt instead of suspicion. Part 8. The notary appointment. The final piece fell into place almost by accident, 6 weeks into the investigation. Marisol mentioned it casually one Tuesday afternoon while making my mother tea, in the same warm, unbothered tone she used for everything. "The paperwork guy's stopping by again Thursday. Just a small update, nothing to worry about." Priscilla and Corinne moved fast once I told them. Rather than intervening before the appointment, Priscilla proposed something bolder: let it happen, but be present in the house, along with a licensed forensic document examiner ready to step in the exact moment Rodrigo produced whatever he intended for my mother to sign. I spent that Wednesday night rehearsing normalcy in the mirror, like an actress preparing for the worst audition of her life. Thursday, 2 in the afternoon. I sat with my mother in the living room, heart hammering so hard I could feel it behind my ribs, while Priscilla and the examiner waited quietly in the hallway, just out of camera view. Marisol moved through the house with her usual calm efficiency, setting out tea, humming something under her breath. Rodrigo arrived exactly on time, same leather folder, same practiced warmth. "Just a small clarification to the existing trust," he said, opening the folder in front of my mother, sliding a pen toward her fingers with a gentleness that made my stomach turn now that I understood exactly what it meant. Priscilla stepped into the room. "Before you continue, Mr. Alvarado, I'd like to see your current notary commission. State registry shows it was revoked 3 years ago." His face drained of color in real time. Marisol's hand, resting on my mother's shoulder in the exact position I'd watched on camera a dozen times by then, went completely rigid. "This is a private family matter," Rodrigo said, the exact phrase I'd later learn, straight out of Desmond's standard playbook. "It became a legal matter," Priscilla replied, her voice level and unhurried, "the moment you attempted to notarize a legal document using a revoked commission, targeting a diagnosed dementia patient, on behalf of a client with a documented pattern of doing exactly this across 3 counties and at least 6 families. The forensic examiner stepped in behind her, already photographing the folder's contents where it sat open on the table. Part 9. The twist nobody saw coming. Marisol broke almost immediately. Faced with the examiner cataloging evidence in real time and Priscilla calmly outlining the criminal exposure for elder fraud under Texas law, she asked to call her own attorney, a request Priscilla granted without objection, though not before Corinne pulled me aside in the kitchen and told me something that reframed the entire scheme. She's been paid significantly more than Desmond's other caregivers, Corinne said quietly. Nearly $40,000 over 14 months, compared to roughly $8,000 for the caregivers linked to the other cases I found. That kind of gap isn't coincidence. Why her? Why so much more? Because she's not just an employee, Renee. She and Desmond have been together for 2 years. She's his partner, and she didn't get assigned to your mother's case randomly. She requested it, specifically, after learning through a mutual contact in the home care industry exactly who you were, and exactly what your mother's trust was worth. I stood in my mother's kitchen, the same room where I'd watched Rodrigo's folder open on camera dozens of times, and understood, fully, for the first time, that none of this had been random. This wasn't a stranger finding an easy target. This was Desmond, 9 years after walking away from our partnership with a settlement he'd never stopped resenting, finding a way back into my life through the one person he correctly guessed I couldn't protect fast enough, my own mother, losing her mind one day at a time, unable to defend herself against someone patient enough to wait 14 months for the right moment. Part 10. The hearing. The petition to void the amendment stretched across 3 days, not one. Priscilla called Dr. Lenore Firth, a cognitive specialist who testified, based on neuropsychological testing conducted during the exact window the documents were signed, that my mother's cognitive function at the time did not allow her to understand the legal nature of what she was signing. Defense counsel, a young attorney named Trevor Slade, tried to have the footage thrown out entirely, arguing the camera had been installed without Marisol's consent and potentially violated Texas recording statutes. Priscilla was ready for this. The camera sat in a home I co-owned through the family trust, making the recording fully legal under state law, regardless of Marisol's knowledge of it. The hardest moment of the entire hearing wasn't the expert testimony. It was the judge asking me directly to describe what I felt the first time I saw that footage. I stood, looked at the jury, and said, I saw my mother, who didn't remember what she was signing, and a woman I hired to protect her, making sure she signed it anyway. The courtroom went completely silent for several seconds. Denise Okafor testified on the third day, her reopened case now tied to mine through pattern evidence Corinne had compiled. If I'd had what she has, she told the jury, looking directly at them, the outcome would have been completely different. Her testimony did something no other piece of evidence could. It turned one isolated case into a demonstrable pattern, and a pattern into a system too consistent across 3 counties to be dismissed as coincidence. Part 11. What happened after? The court voided the fraudulent amendment within 3 weeks of Priscilla's emergency petition, citing both Rodrigo's invalid commission and the medical evaluation confirming Mom's diminished capacity during the entire window in question. The original trust, naming me sole executor, exactly as it had for over a decade, was fully reinstated without contest. Marisol was charged with elder financial exploitation and conspiracy to commit fraud. Facing the combined weight of the footage, the financial trail, and Denise Okafor's willingness to testify about the earlier Fort Worth case, she pleaded to reduce charges in exchange for full cooperation and testimony against Desmond. That testimony, once it came, blew the case open far wider than any of us anticipated. Desmond's practice, once fully exposed through Marisol's records and Corinne's continued digging, had targeted at least 6 families across the greater Dallas area over 4 years, extracting an estimated total of $340,000 in redirected inheritance funds before anyone caught the pattern clearly enough to stop it. His law license was suspended immediately, pending a formal disbarment hearing scheduled for later this year. Rodrigo faces separate charges for practicing as a notary without a valid commission, on top of his role in the broader fraud. A joint investigation between county prosecutors and the state attorney general's elder fraud division is now examining whether additional victims exist beyond the 6 families already confirmed. Denise Okafor's case, closed for 8 months, was reopened based on the pattern evidence. She called me the day she found out, crying on the phone in a way that told me she'd stopped expecting justice a long time before I ever showed up with a camera full of proof. Part 12. My Mother Now. Mom's condition has continued to decline gently in the months since. Some days better, some days gone somewhere I can't quite follow her to. But she is safe now, cared for by a new caregiver, hired through an entirely different process, one that includes background checks I insist on running myself, personally, every single time, no exceptions, no matter how warm anyone seems on a first meeting. I still keep the camera running. Not out of suspicion toward the people caring for her now. She's earned real trust in 100 small ways since. I keep it running because I learned, in the worst possible way, exactly how much can happen in a room I'm not standing in, and exactly how far a mother, losing her memory piece by piece, will still go to protect the daughter she can't always remember the name of anymore. Some evenings, sitting with her while she half watches her shows, not really following the plot, but content in the noise and the company, I think about that note in her Bible. 10 weeks of fog, and somewhere in the middle of it, one clear enough morning to write down a name and a warning before it slipped away again. I don't know how many more mornings like that she has left, but I know she used one of them to try to save me, and I caught the rest on camera, because for once, guilt led me somewhere it actually needed to go. If this story stayed with you, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever discovered a betrayal hiding behind someone you trusted to care for the person you love most, I want to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. We have many more stories like this one waiting, real, raw, and hopeful. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Let's keep walking through these moments together.